Hey guys, I'm Jordan and you're watching Fixbook. After watching this video, your car problems stand about as much a chance as this laptop does against my hot lead. Now, make sure you stay tuned so you can see what happened to the laptop at the end of this video. And as always, don't forget to subscribe, like, and leave a comment down below. So today I'm going to be showing you how to install a brand new ball joint in your Honda Civic. Okay guys, and here's just about all the tools I used for today's project. And first, I'm just going to swivel over here. You see that table vise over there? You're also going to need the table vise in addition to the tools that I have laid out right here. And let's see, so I'll go over everything I used. I used a long 3/8 ratchet, a regular 3/8 ratchet, a 19mm socket, 17mm socket, 12mm socket, deep 19mm socket, a 3/8 extension, a 17 and 19mm 1/2 inch with a universal joint. I used some PB blaster. It's helpful to have a little Cotter Pin universal set there. New Cotter Pins to put in your castle nuts. Also ball joint separator. A punch here along with the hammer, and you actually didn't see me use this in the video. Towards the end of the video, just to deal with that axle nut, you'll use a punch like this to kind of put that mark in the axle nut to keep the axle nut from moving right at the end of the axle. Okay, enough blabbering about that. I also use this 1/2 inch breaker bar. I use this 32mm socket, a torque wrench. I also used a couple of jack stands, a flashlight. I already said the hammer. I used a pair of dikes. You don't really need these, but they were just in the video, so I put them in there. I did use them as like as a flathead screwdriver. You'll also need a pair of snap ring pliers, and I use this really big hefty jack, not just like a regular jack. You'll need a bigger jack like that as well. So that's pretty much all the tools you'll need for today. And if you do have castle nut problems, you may need a 1/2 inch gun to use these 1/2 inch things on there, but I was able to do today's project without using a 1/2 inch air gun in the sockets there. So with all that said, let's go ahead and begin today's project. Alright guys, and the first thing we'll do is go ahead and break your lug nuts loose. So once you get your car lifted up in the air, we'll be able to remove the lug nuts all the way and take your wheel off. Okay guys, and the next thing we'll want to do is go ahead and lift up the car. You can see where that jack stand is sitting right there. We'll go ahead and put the jack stand right there, but underneath where you'll see this little place there meant for a jack stand. And then the jack stand is actually going to lift up on that hook looking thing there underneath the front of your car, right where the jack is lifting up. Alright, so now I'll just finish taking these lug nuts off here. Alright guys, and the next thing you're going to want to do is go ahead and take a flathead screwdriver. I actually don't have mine just for the moment, so I'm using this pair of pliers right here. But you're going to do the same thing. You'll go ahead and stick this in. We're going to, I guess it's called unchucking this spindle nut or axle nut. So we'll be able to break it loose, and I'll just go ahead and grab my flathead screwdriver in a minute and do that. Then we'll also take a 32mm socket. We're going to stick it on the end of here and break it loose. Okay guys, and I took that flathead screwdriver and I got him out there nice and good. It'll look just like that. May not be all the way, but that's just fine. So now we'll take our 32mm socket and I'm just going to go ahead and break them loose there. And I've already got them all lifted up, but hopefully your car's still on the ground, and once we break them loose there, we can just take them right off like that. Okay guys, and the next thing I'm going to do here is we're going to be rearranging our jack. First, we'll want to go ahead and let the jack down on that jack stand. We're going to want the jack stand to hold on to the car for us. Then we're going to take our jack here and we're going to move him from there, that little hook area guy I was talking about, to right down here somewhere. We're going to put him right about here, and we're going to lift up on the car, and we're going to raise the car up as high as we can, because ideally what we're going to be doing is we're going to be changing the ball joint while the knuckle is still on the car. And because basically the job calls for about 2 hours, but I'm going to try and skip the knuckle removal process, and I'm going to show you guys how to do that. So I will give you all a little shortcut here, and we'll remove this lower ball joint without actually removing the knuckle, which will be great. Now, if you wanted to remove the the upper ball joint there, we are actually going to have to remove the knuckle, but the upper ball joint is most commonly just going to be fine. It's generally the lower ball joint for these Honda Civics that goes bad, and your upper ball joint should last about 500,000 miles, so you probably don't need to replace that, chances are. So we're going to go ahead and lift the car up right here, and we're going to jack it way up in the air as high as we can get it. Okay guys, so here we are. You can see I've changed the jack position. I've also changed the jack stand position because my other jack, it was smaller, and I'm using a bigger jack now because the car is so high up in the air. And basically, we're going to be focusing in right here on our ball joint. Alright, so the next thing we'll do here is we'll go ahead and remove this cotter pin. And we want to do this before we do anything else, because if you get to this part and you figure out you can't remove your castle nut there, then there's really no point of doing the other things first. So you want to make sure first you're going to be able to remove this castle nut, because this is a difficult thing to do, and I may have to use an air compressor and an air gun, and I know you guys may not have that, but one solution is if you have a Harbor Freight around you somewhere nearby, you can go ahead and purchase an electric corded impact gun, and you may be able to get that off with that impact corded gun. I have the air gun there, so it may be difficult to get this castle nut off, like I'm saying here. So we're gonna see if it comes off easy. It's gonna give me trouble. If it starts spinning, that's gonna give me trouble, and it's not gonna be real easy. So let's see, it either just broke loose or spun on me. So we're about to find out. Oh yeah, so it's stuck on me. That's great. So, and you may have the same problem with it going back on as well. So as long as you can get the cotter key in there, you should be safe to drive it when you put it back on. But like I said, if you get stuck, that's just one thing you want to keep in mind when you're putting it back together. If you spin it right on and this stud starts spinning, then you may have to purchase kind of like a impact gun, maybe like a corded impact gun for 60 bucks. Because I mean, you don't want to buy an air compressor and an air gun. That's going to be a whole lot of money. But just keep that in mind. That is necessary to ensure a good job when we're replacing this ball joint. Alright, and the next thing I'll do, guys, is I'll come over here. We want to get this hose kind of off, and we're going to take this whole piece and set it over here. So first, we'll want to go ahead and take this nut off. It's a 12mm nut, and let me go ahead and just get on them there, and lefty loosen them right off there. And we got a whole bunch of crud coming out. It's always fun. And just to make sure I don't damage anything, I'm going to go ahead and grab some PB Blaster and just kind of clean it up there. I'll run it back down a little bit more, and then I'll run it back in just to make sure the bolt and threads don't get damaged. And you can go ahead and just take that nut all the way off, and if you're having the same problem, just do the same thing as me. Take some PB Blaster, spray it on both ends, and then we'll run them down and then run them back up. And that way we'll make sure we don't damage the bolt or the threads, and then this hose will just come right off. Run them back in, and then I'll just run them back out, and as you can see here, it's coming out a little bit better. I'm a little bit happier with that. And there we go. So now we got our hose out of the way, and next what we'll do is we'll go ahead and grab our 19mm, and we'll just take this whole assembly off here and kind of set it off to the side. And before you're going to do that also, what you'll want to do is kind of come here with your flathead screwdriver, and let's see if you can see what I'm talking about. You can't. So we'll come right here with a flathead screwdriver, just kind of reach in there and just kind of compress that piston a little bit so this will move around freely. Otherwise, you may not be able to take this whole assembly off like you'll see me do here in just a moment. Okay, and here we are, and you're not going to be able to see both the bolts, but there's one right here. You can see my finger on it, and basically this is the caliper bracket bolts. I'll go ahead and begin by loosening this one down here. Just going to loosen them up there, and I'll get the other one, which is going to be up top, and there we go. So now I'll just go ahead and take my socket and extension and just kind of work these guys out. There's the one right there, the short little stubby guy. And I'll take this bottom one out. You may have to lift up on the bracket here a little bit. And there we go. So now this guy will just slide right off like so. And with our hose disconnected, we can set them off here in a safe place. And try and be easy, guys, so we can keep those pads right in there, and then we won't have to really mess with them any. But if they fall out, you may have a mess to deal with, and I feel sorry for you if that happens. Oh, and guys, you might be wondering what I did with my caliper bracket. Well, for right now, I just kind of set them out of the way. I kind of set them there behind my jack, and he's just sitting there on a jack stand, kind of just resting back there. And my hopes are that when I'm banging on stuff, it's not going to really be affected because it's really just out there sitting out of the way. But if I do have trouble with that, then I'll show you where you're going to want to move it out of the way if it's interfering with the job over here. Now, the next thing we want to do is go ahead and, if you haven't already, just remove your axle nut, and we'll go ahead and set this rotor off to the side, kind of get him out of our way. And now we're going to deal with our tie rod end, and we're first going to take this nut off. I believe it's a 17mm nut. We got that Cotter key again, and hopefully again, guys, this thing will come out pretty easy. So I'll just take my dikes here, just kind of grab a hold of them, and like I was saying, we'll just go ahead with our dikes and we'll grab a hold of them here. Just kind of want to bend the guy out of the way, bend this other one out of the way. Like so, and then we'll just go ahead and grab this, and I just like to clamp down and pull like that. And also, well, I'm gonna take some PB Blaster, kind of help me along the way. I don't want to get it up on the stud. Ideally, we want the stud to just kind of sit still, and we want the threads to be real easy for us. So just like that right there, that's enough. I don't want to get it too much up in there. So now we'll take our 17mm here, wherever he may be. I'll just go ahead and set them on there, and then we'll just hope and pray that this thing comes off. And just one little thing here, so I'm just gonna, there we go, and hopefully, yes, it was a nut again. Okay, so this is good, this is real good. Now, again, like I was saying, you just wanna remember that when we go to put this back on, either one of these studs can spin on us. So it may be necessary to have access to an impact gun. So keep that in mind before you begin your project. Now what we'll do is we'll unmount the tie rod end and the ball joint, and we're going to use our special tool to do that. So we can kind of pop the knuckle out of place, and then we'll pull the axle out, and we'll go ahead and swing the knuckle around so we can begin removing the ball joint. Alright, so I'm going to begin using the easier of the two methods, which is just your hammer right here. We're going to hit up on them, and then whether it needs it or not, I'll use the special tool for the ball joint just so you know how to use that in case you need to use that. So basically we're just going to hit on the stud. Be really careful not to get those threads, because then we'll have a problem getting your castle nut back on. So there we go. So that one came out, it cooperated really nicely. Now we'll go down to the ball joint and we will separate it from the knuckle. Alright, so now we'll work on getting this ball joint separated from the knuckle. And to do that, we're going to use our special ball joint tool here. And I got this one from Harbor Freight for 20 bucks. You could also probably find it at Northern Tools, or any of the professional tool carriers will probably carry as well. And it's almost like they made this one for Honda Civic ball joints, because what you'll do is you'll have your tool here. Sorry, I'm making sure it's in the camera. It'll set to the lowest one here, so we're gonna run the stud here through this guy right here. And when we run the stud all the way back off there, and this piece right here will touch that, that's perfectly fit for the ball joint removing thing here for the Honda Civic. So we'll go ahead and stick them in here like so. And basically what we've got is we've got this top piece right here setting over top of the knuckle where the ball joint sets in, and then we've got this bottom piece here setting on the stud. And what we'll do is we'll take a socket here, I think it's a 19mm, it's going to sit on top of this stud. We're going to run this guy down, and what we've got here is kind of like a seesaw, where this is going to push here. We've got our pivot point right here, and when we push down on this piece, it's going to be pushing the stud up, so that's going to pop the ball joint out of the knuckle. Okay guys, and again, I just want to make sure you got a really good shot here. I wanted to make sure you really see what exactly is going on here. So these two claws right up here are going to go right in this position right here, and they're going to grab onto that piece, and I'm just going to slide them in right behind there. And again, I'll tighten this guy up, and you can see him there kind of holding onto the stud. So I'll go ahead and run my tool down here, and you'll just see the stud, he'll pop right up out of that knuckle.